So, yes, Rachel, you started the recording. So I would like to welcome everyone to the meeting of the Patients and Communities Committee. The meeting is held in public, is not a public meeting, is held in public, is recorded for minute-taking purpose, but also the recording is being placed on the website. So those who are not able to be present in a meeting to join today will be able to see it later. Just as a reminder for everyone, for presenters in particular, the papers have been circulated in advance. So when you present your item, please don't read slide by slides. We read it, so take it as read, but just highlight the key items, the key issues you would like us to pay attention to in more detail, to give us the time to have that discussion and scrutiny and assurance and so on. I think that is all in terms of an introduction. Please, presenters, but also people asking questions, as we are not doing the introduction at the beginning. When you start speaking for the first time, please can you introduce yourself so people know who is talking. Otherwise, I will now move to the agenda item number 1, and is apologies for absence. Rachel, are you able to tell us who sent the apologies and who may send people who are standing in for them, please?
Okay, so I've received apologies from Tricia Dorsey, and Karen Watts is here representing Tricia. Matt Dooley, Karen Bryant is attending today for Matt, and Stuart Lines, but Suzanne Meredith is here attending for Stuart.
Excellent. Thank you, Rachel. Declaration of interest. The register has been circulated with the papers. So all the conflict of interests are there. However, if during the meeting there is no conflict arising for any of people taking part, please raise your hand so we can register that interest if it's pertinent to an agenda item. Thank you. Minutes from the previous meeting. So Rachel, thank you as always. Detailed minutes. May I take any points of accuracy first before matters arising? So do the committee members have any observations on the accuracy of those minutes, please? Anyone? Please raise your hand if you do. No, I cannot see any. So we'll approve those minutes as an accurate record of our previous meeting. Any matters arising which are not on the agenda today, or anything burning from what we discussed last time from anyone? No? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the action log, which from what I've seen is pretty empty. Is that right, Rachel? So there isn't any actions for us to action. So we'll move straight nicely to the risk register. Mark, over to you, please.
Thank you, Aliona, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark Burgess. I'm Director of Patients and Communities for the ICB. I'm hoping my voice will last, so I'm going to be fairly concise on this and my later item. But just to update the committee that we still have the 2 remaining BAF risks highlighted. The first, BAF 01, relates to health inequalities and population health management around us meeting our statutory duties. The score has not, it has been, you'll see an update since our last committee. However, the score has not changed. The risk rating has not changed. And the same applies to BAF 05 around our increasing numbers and complexity of the ageing population in Norfolk and Waveney. This is something we've had quite a bit of discussion about recently, and it links in, I know Frankie's going to update us a bit later on, some of the ageing well work as well. But this is an important risk for us to consider, but again, the scoring hasn't changed. In terms of operational risks, there have still been none that have been raised specifically for this committee. I am expecting that to change to the next meeting. I'm expecting some conversations from some of our place-based colleagues. They have expressed a wish to highlight some of those concerns at an operational level to the committee, so I'm expecting that to the next meeting. And there were some that were proposed here, but actually they're being picked up by other committees, such as the Primary Care Commissioning Committee, and we didn't want to duplicate. I think it's really important that that each committee has very clear sight of the risk that that it has responsibility and oversight of. So that's the current position this month. But again, very happy to take any questions or answer any questions if I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mark, can I go to BAF 1, the health inequalities one, please? So whilst I'm very aware that we're asking people to sign up to the strategy, the framework for action, from your perspective, what are we doing in real terms, in terms of making sure that our providers are working towards reducing those health inequalities, please?
Absolutely, really important question. So, and I'm very pleased to report there's lots of interest in the work we're doing in this area. I think Shelley may be on the call or joining a bit later. So, as well as doing the self-assessment, Aliona, that engagement is key around this, and making sure that the work that we do, every project that we do, has at least considered the impact on health inequalities. At our away session as an ICB, for example, we had a fairly full session. Subsequently, have had 2 follow-up sessions with our staff, our senior leaders across the ICB. 48 people attended that. There's a lot of interest in making sure that we're going about this the right way. So we've still got a lot of work to do, Aliona, but we are engaging with providers right across the sector. I don't know if Shelley's here, and Tracy's definitely here as well, so may want to come in more specifically on that. But Tracy?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, happy to, Aliona. I think Frankie will touch on a little bit when she does the insurance report from the Population Health and Inequalities Board, because we do have quite an extensive programme in respect of the healthcare inequalities. So the element that we're responsible for as an ICB and we're leading on, and Frankie will update on some of that work that's underway. But there is a supporting programme of work which is very full that sits behind that. There is a strategic group within the ICS, so there is work underway. And certainly some of the healthcare inequalities work, we do have an NHS Anchors group that consists of our trust colleagues and those NHS providers, which we're bringing together in order to do some of that work which Mark has just outlined. This year is our year of laying those foundations and get everything right. So we hope to be able to report that progress moving forwards. As a health inequalities framework as a whole, the progress gets reported to the integrated care partnership. So, and there will be action plans that are specific under each of the 3 pillars of that framework. So I hope that's a helpful update.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Of course, it's important for us to make sure that whilst we're making some progress within the health part of the system, is to make sure that we are extending that across the system. We have a range of providers, and I'm sure work is happening. We just need the reassurance and assurance that we're sort of trying to move the agenda across the system as much as possible at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. If I may just add, Aliona, we'll absolutely bring back updates to this committee as that work progresses, because it's a kind of key strand of everything that we're doing. Absolutely.
Exactly. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tracy. Any other questions from anyone? Karen?
Hi, just a couple of points. I think at the last Quality and Safety Committee, there was mention of some potential risks moving from there to here, but I don't see them yet, so I assume that conversation's happening. Yes, Frankie's thumbs up, thank you. In terms of absolutely get the focus around the older people, but I was just thinking, reflecting more about, I don't know, the messaging around frailty per se, and trying to move that from an age focus to a sort of all age frailty, and just was mindful of thinking about messaging. And I know that I completely get the focus on older people, but it's just the reflection of where's frailty in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, do you have anything to come back? Or?
Yeah, just to completely agree with it, and we need to be careful with language, myself included, Karen. I completely agree with you. And actually, if we take the example of some of the work that's happening in North Norfolk and frailty, the work around frailty that's happening there, we're I think 50 plus is being discussed as well. So we shouldn't always assume, as you correctly highlight, that it's.
Now I'm depressed. All right.
No, don't be. But it's important that we do look at all of our population, isn't it? So we need to consider it. But no, that is a good challenge, Karen. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Frankie.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. We are moving to a non-age specific definition of frailty across the system. We're bringing the Rockwood clinical frailty score across our providers as well. However, the BAF risks are in line with the BAF wording. So that is what our board assurance framework wording says. So that's where it's come from in this case.
Thank you. Please remember to introduce yourselves when you speak next time.
Sorry.
Thank you. No, that's all good. Okay, I can't see any more hands up in relation to the risk register. Do help me, I'm working from a very small screen now. So if I miss anything, please wave at me to make sure I don't, be perceived that I'm ignoring people, because I'm not, I just can't see it. Thank you. So we'll move on now to our quite large agenda item, very exciting one, spotlight on mental health and patients' experience and uptake on services. So I think we are starting with patients' experience, if I'm right. And Emma, shall we come to you?
Yep, okay. Hi, I'm Emma. I'm the Assembly member on the ICB. We've got 2 videos to show you just to highlight patient experience this afternoon. And what we wanted to do was highlight the importance of community-based interventions and multidisciplinary working. So we've got one service, which is Age UK, who pick up someone who they think just needs help with some paperwork, but as we all know, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And the second video highlights what great work you can do when you've actually got more than one organisation coming together. So it's a compilation piece of work with, in Norwich, organisations like Future Projects and Age UK. In Great Yarmouth, there was a really lovely piece of work with Dial and the East Coast College, and having those services in the, although it was an employment service, having them based in mental health hubs. Again, people are referred for employment advice or services, and very quickly you unpick quite a lot of mental health need. So it was just really for us giving you an example of patient experience when everyone thinks it's quite low need, but actually it's very high. But being located in the community areas and at place really helps. So Rachel has got both those videos to play.
I have always been very active. A lot of life I was physically active because I was shepherding for 4 years when I was young. Mm-hmm. And then I had a small holding, then I had 2 children, and then I needed to make money, so I sold double glazing, made a small fortune. Then after that, then I met my second husband and married him. And then, but basically, I've always been up and out. And my marriage finished in 98, and I ran away to join a theatre group. Mm-hmm. So it's, I like adventures. I always like adventures. But anyway, I basically spent my 50s travelling out to Australia and coming back again. Mm-hmm. And I went to Vietnam, and I was so lucky I got to Burma. Wow, because not many people can. And then this year, everything went wrong. It absolutely the lowest I think I could ever imagine being, and I could see absolutely no point in staying alive. It was, and I did understand the fact that there were people who would help. I think the other thing is, I have osteoporosis, and sometimes my back is incredibly painful, and I'm very disabled by it. I just can't cope with the moving, and I think that sort of come on me as well at the same time. So everything just seems so awful. Anyway, he put me on all these lists for NHS help and everything else, but it was all sort of months in the future. And then I was so lucky because I saw something about advertising for Age Concern or Age UK, and that's when I met Ria, who has been phenomenally brilliant. And because with all this depression business, it affects everything in your life. I couldn't get up, I couldn't get dressed, I couldn't go out, I couldn't touch my desk, and I had all these envelopes piling up on my desk, and I just couldn't get my act together to do anything. And it's not that I'm friendless, it's just that when you're not well, you don't particularly want to involve anybody else, you know. And I certainly wouldn't tell my sons that I wasn't well, because, I mean, they have their lives to lead. You know, I don't want them to think, oh, poor old mum, you know, I've got to go back and look after her. So it's very, very challenging, but, well, Leo has been an absolute godsend and has got me out of it. And then she's introduced me to Ellie, who runs arty parties. And I've always been a crafty person. I've always, when you look around the room, you can see it everywhere. I've always made stuff and played with things and bought stuff when I could. And so now I'm involved once a month with the art project, and to help people like me.
Thank you. I think you've got the second one, Rachel, I hope. Is there a second video coming up, Rachel?
My life before was hard. It was full of upset, trauma, mockery.
Where I was before I came here was not a good place at all. I'd worked in a care home for 6 years, and some of the team leaders started to get nasty. I know I was good at my job, but they were bullying me, and I basically had a mental breakdown, had to be put on antidepressants, and just really wasn't in a good place in my head at all.
I enrolled as a participant with project 5 years ago now. I've been unemployed for 2 years, had zero self-confidence, and numerous barriers to work.
I'd been poorly for 3 years, and I'd had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, so I couldn't mix with anybody. I got to this stage where I didn't want to go out, I didn't want to see anybody, I didn't want to get out. All I done was cry. I didn't want to be here anymore. And I knew I couldn't carry on feeling the way that I was feeling. And I really was bad. And that was when I came in here, and I walked in here and said, could somebody help me?
It's as well as the Waterways project that we're here at today. We're running currently 6 other projects throughout Norfolk in the DPS. The staff at Access on the Waterways project have been amazing, helping 33 participants to get closer to the job market by either job search outcome or employment or education. The project has been phenomenal, a phenomenal success to the participants of Great Yarmouth.
We get lots of people in from all different areas that have been out of work or are finding it difficult to get back into work, and we give them that opportunity to learn, to develop skills, to develop life skills with the customers, with the coffee, so that they can progress and go into future employment. And it's just really nice to see them realise who they are again, because they've kind of gone back and not realised that they've got all this potential. So it's lovely to fill them up with all the positive vibes and know that they're capable, and to trust themselves as well.
My mental health is a lot better. I still take my medication. I still have anxiety days, but when I'm here, I just don't even think about it when I'm here. I'm in such a good place right now, which is lovely, and that's all thanks to these guys.
When I do my degree, I'm going to take a year out for myself. And through doing my course and more of it, I've learned a lot, about me and about other people.
I don't want to go anywhere else. I love working here. That's such a little, nice, especially in the summer, that's such a little sun trap here. It's lovely.
It sort of broke down some of the walls and the barriers that I had, and sort of gave me a great confidence boost.
I'm going to go to America to see my sister for the first time in 20 years. I would never have been able to fly on my own, and I'm going to do it. I'm just happy every day. You know, and I know I'm going to have my down days. I'm under no illusions, but I can honestly tell you that if I hadn't have come in here that day, I wouldn't be here now.
You're on mute, Aliona. I think you're talking to me.
I am talking to you. You're a good
Yeah.
lip reader then. Emma, thank you very much. And please, can you pass our thanks to all the people who took part in the videos and shared their experiences with us. A question is not an easy thing to do. So yeah, they're very brave and clearly they're well supported by the organizations involved. The question I have is about continuity of support. People on the program, so I'm thinking Access here, the second video, are they able to just drop in when they feel that they may not be doing the progress they hoped for? How is the service run? I'm just thinking about how people seek help as and when needed, please.
Yeah, so the majority of the support is delivered through the STEAM hubs, which you've got Kings Lynn and Gorleston. So the Gorleston hub, the work you saw there that goes on in Great Yarmouth is customers that have come via your Gorleston hub. And yes, people can come throughout their journey, and people come, you find, at the beginning, often for some small referral, like, you know, can I get back into volunteering because I'm a bit lonely at home, right the way through to you've helped them go through their journey, ending up going on holiday to America. And then you'll find maybe 6 months later that something else has happened in their lives and they're feeling a bit anxious again, and they can come back into the hub. So there's kind of zero exclusion approach to a lot of that work that goes on in the hub. And one of the nice things about adding something like an employment service is you're adding additional support, because they can also go back and talk to the employment people that supported them, the volunteers that supported them. So you're adding in extra layers all of the time by having that kind of one-stop front shop for some of that mental health stuff. And again, with the Age UK service, it's a social prescribing type service, but the additional support that's added by Age UK and all of the agencies that they're linked into means that an individual gets services from, you know, it essentially could be hundreds of support services rather than just one.
Emma, so if you had to go to the other spectrum, if people come to you and you identify that actually they need more specialist mental health interventions, how easy is for the organization to actually make onwards referral, being formal, formal or soft referrals to specialist services?
That's not easy, I'll be honest with you. What we find is people presenting in crisis at a variety of community place-based services. People will arrive in crisis, and then really it's down to the referral process into NSFT. And sometimes it is, even though technically you're not supposed to do it these days, sometimes staff do report that actually they feel their only option is to phone an ambulance because it's 10:30 at night, someone's presenting in crisis, and you haven't had a reply to your referral 4 hours ago.
I'm really sorry to hear this. We have a few more things to discuss with this item. So by the time we come to the end of it, Emma, can you give us a sort of few bullet points as to what do you think this committee should be taking forward and do about in terms of your experiences on behalf of service users who you are supporting, please? So it will give you time to think about it. But I can't see any more hands up from anybody. So if there is no particular questions to the videos, I'll move on to Healthwatch perspective, please. But Emma, if you can think of my request, please, that would be great. So Alex, am I coming to you?
I think so. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was a really lovely story to watch. I'm afraid my story is not going to be quite so pleasant to listen to. We've been doing a lot of work with carers of people with serious mental illness. And this is gone across some Suffolk carers of SMI have joined this group as well, and they kind of feel. And Andy, please chip in if because I know you're there. They don't feel valued or recognised, and they often have to fight for the person that they're trying to represent. Some also told us that they didn't feel they get adequate support, nor was the support specialised enough. And that in addition to the challenge of caring, which would often have a negative impact on their own physical and mental health, their sort of finances and personal relationships were frequently affected. I think the whole thing, these concerns are sort of set against a backdrop of a need for better mental health care in Norfolk generally. We know, for example, from the learning from deaths, that there's been poor communication that has improved within the trust, but there is still a long way to go, and there is still a decided lack of trust in very specific services, and we made some recommendations to the trust which are being hopefully actioned as we speak. So more staff training to ensure there's more involvement and support for carers and that they feel involved. That they increase in communication and information for carers of adults with SMI, and that they explore the possibility of carer groups or forums in each part of the Norfolk and Suffolk Foundation Trust, which works with adults with SMI to see if carer champions could also be employed. I think from an ICB perspective, we have to voice our disappointment that when we issued this report, we didn't get a response from the ICB. And we have been asking for the ICB to sort of actively join this group because we feel that as the Commissioners of Services, that the ICB should be involved. So we sort of still push for that. And I suppose the Trust have come back and they've told us that they're pushing in a number of measures to ensure carers feel involved. And at a recent HOSC, one of the carers spoke quite vocally about the fact that she did feel that she was finally being listened to. But this particular carer, I would say, is very good at advocating on her son's behalf. And I fear that for those who haven't got personality is the wrong word, so excuse my clumsiness here, but that haven't got that sort of wherewithal or ability to perhaps articulate the problems that they're experiencing, that they're probably frequently left sort of in a desert, and finding life very trying and very difficult. Well, shut up there, Aliona.
Alex, thank you. And very sad to hear what you have to say. I do remember when you launched the project, I think I was present.
You were, yeah.
And I thought that was being sort of well connected now within the system. So I am just wondering, because post restructure of the ICB, I'm not quite sure who is holding which baby. Apologies for that. But I'm just wondering, I'm looking at Mark Frankie within the exec team, whoever is responsible now for mental health transformational, that package. Can we please, communicate that maybe whoever that is can just reconnect with Alex and just see what we need to learn from that, please. Yeah, we need to take this forward. So I'll appreciate if that is an action, so then we can get an update as to what happened as a result. But Alex, because that was almost 2 years ago, or thereabout, it's 18 months, isn't it?
It's a 3-year project, so we're in middle of year 2 at the moment.
Yeah. Is there any improvement at all from the perspective of carers, of people?
Oh, without a doubt. I painted a very big picture, but they would all turn around and say, yes, there is definite improvement. But I kind of, again, I suppose what I'm saying here is that they are now in the know of how to work through the system. And what concerns me is that becomes a select few, and that those who aren't able to articulate will find themselves sort of in this desert that I was referring to earlier. And, if you've got a son, daughter, partner, whoever, who's in a state of acute sort of chaotic crisis, you're basically trying to keep them together rather than worrying about yourself. And I kind of think a lot of things go by the wayside. And I think the fact that, and frankly, correct me if I'm wrong here, but as far as I'm aware, GPs still don't get trained in mental health. It's not part of their core training. It's still a sort of voluntary module that they do. So I kind of think that there's this feeling that within primary care that there's a lack of knowledge and perhaps the desire to deflect, quite understandably. So again, I fear that if NSFT are rejecting a referral for whatever reason, and this is something else we're working on, what happens to that poor person? And we know that there are a number of people who sort of, no, you're not ill enough for us to see, go and, you know, seek advice. And this is where sort of the projects that Emma was referring to are absolutely priceless. Because they do offer a glimmer of hope for people, and as we've seen from those videos, are worth their weight in gold.
Alex, so it seems to me there's few issues. I think we need some clarification as to what happens when the referral doesn't get through. So can that be taken as an action? Because some of it is about proper communication and information giving, so to speak. The other thing, yes, you're talking about training. And then I'm thinking about the co-production strategy, which is currently at the point of being approved, isn't it? Mental health co-production. So, you know, those kind of things, when you're saying some voices are not being heard, we need to think about how we engage with people whose voice we don't hear in those co-production pieces of work. So there's few actions there. Can I leave that, Mark, with you, and then you can take it forward and connect it, Alex, so we can just unpick those and allocate to the right people, please.
Can I just come back and say something about co-production, because I still don't think that we have defined what we mean by co-production, and I think that this kind of phrase is bandied about quite sort of willy-nilly, and it's confusing for us who are working within this sort of sphere, but I think it's even more confusing for those that want to help co-produce. But again, I think, where do I go for honey?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And when that strategy comes for approval, one of my questions is, tell me in 2 words or 3 or 5 words what co-production is to you. Because yes, we need to clarify that, you know, the sort of elevator speech. If we don't understand it from one phrase, then the chances are nobody will understand the same thing. So thank you, Alex. The same question for you by the end of this, and I need to move it on really. If you can think of a few points which you would like this committee to take forward and make sure that we are sort of supporting with the progression, that will be great, just as I asked Emma, if that's okay. That will move me on now to, I can't see any hands up, so please do help yourself to raising your hands. But John Punt, I think I'm coming to you now for patient feedback, please.
Thanks, Ellie.
We have a report from you, don't we, John?
Yes. Which is a brief report that Mark asked me to prepare for this committee. For those of you that don't know me, I'm John Punt. I'm the Senior Manager for Patient Experience for the ICB. And hopefully the report I can take as read, but I really wanted to just highlight a few points from it. And the first is that the volumes that are highlighted in that report are very much the tip of the iceberg, and hopefully I've reflected that in the wording, purely because as commissioners, you know, we only see a very small amount of queries that come to us, and most go direct to NSFT. I've reflected the numbers of formal complaints that NSFT receive, and they are significant. Now, what I would say is, having worked as NSFT's complaints manager in a previous life, they have come down, which is really, really positive. But I think for us, the issues that we see within my team are perhaps twofold, and some of it relating to what Alex was just saying a moment ago. The first is around ADHD and ASD assessments and the weights that patients are having to go through to be seen for diagnostic assessments, which is subsequently having an impact on their mental health. But the second is, and this perhaps isn't reflected in the numbers that I've put in this report, is that there are quite a few patients, I think, whereby community mental health teams or secondary care don't deem them to be ill enough for them to see them. However, they are being managed in primary care, and I think the difficulty is that patients are, my perception is that patients are maybe falling through those cracks in services, and that is something that's I would suggest has been ongoing for some time, and something that we see with regularity. And it's almost, I think sometimes there are patients that maybe are labelled as too difficult to deal with, and that's why they then get pushed around services rather than actually someone getting hold of their presenting issues and then pushing them forward. So those are the points that I wanted to highlight, Aliona. But really happy to take any questions about the types of contact that we are receiving.
John, thank you. On the latter, I'm looking at the 80% of complaints and so on. Yeah, NSFT receives. When we look at the complaints we receive, and do we map it across to NSFT and then do something about it together? Are we working at the system level to solve some of those issues, or are we leaving the NSFT to sort out its own problems and we deal with ours? How are we joining together to address issues, please?
So if it's a complaint about the services that NSFT provide, we will always gain consent from the complainant and then go to NSFT to work together on a joint response. However, I think there's probably a bit more work that needs to happen at system level around. So here are the trends, here are the themes that we're seeing as Commissioner, and then working with provider trusts to have a look at their themes, and then actually working out if the same picture is presenting at both ends, and then what are we going to do about it. So that isn't happening in earnest at the moment, Aliona, is the honest answer to that question. But there is, as I think I've talked about at a previous committee, we now have some more resource coming into the team, which they should be starting January time, back into January, I think, which should allow us to start doing a bit more work more broadly across the whole system.
Thank you, John, because identifying the problem is one thing, doing something
Yes.
about it and learning from it is entirely different. So I hope that not long and we'll hear about some of those activities, because that is the key point. People complain, but they want something to be done about it, isn't it?
And I think there are, on the individual cases, there are a lot of wins that happen in that regard, but it's the system working and the working across, and that principle that I talk about doesn't just mean for mental health services as well. That will be all the acutes, hopefully all of primary care, all of secondary care, that we should be more broadly working better to look at systemic issues.
Indeed. Thank you, John. Tracy?
Yeah, thank you, John. Really helpful. I just think in respect of the trends, I just wanted to just double check again with the complaints that NSFT receive directly, and obviously the ones that come to ICB. Is there a kind of analysis of the trends? Are they going down generally, do you think? Is that what we're seeing? Ellen talked about combining those and just, cross-referencing. So I guess that's something really important, just to see, are they both going down on both counts or going up, and what does that look like over a period of time? I think you're going to hear from Claire in a little while about some of the great work that's taking place from a kind of community, kind of place perspective. And I think sometimes with those complex, perhaps, service users that you described, and that kind of understanding and navigating through different services, that can be a real challenge. So the more we can do, I think, supporting people, navigating and helping people through is going to be really key. And I think that's a part that our voluntary sector, I think we heard it earlier on, play a huge important, part in as well. So it's about joining it all up, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. I think to answer your first question there around, the trends in numbers, from NSFT's perspective, the formal complaints numbers are going down, and that's kind of absolute at the moment. In terms of our numbers, the volumes are quite low regardless across the board, so it's quite difficult to kind of correlate that and work out whether there's kind of any massive trends in numbers. What I would also say about the complex patients that we're talking about is there's very often a real distrust of services, which is built up over a length of time, which is really, really sad. But that sometimes is the blocker as well that we're seeing, that actually, let's face it, if someone ends up at the Commissioner making their complaint or inquiry, they've probably been through a broad range of services already to end up with us, and then they can be quite jaded. So So to try and resolve those ones is becoming increasingly difficult. Sorry, that's not very helpful. That's just a statement, really, more than anything.
Thank you, John. I'm going to make an observation. Lots of cameras are off, unless it's just my screen. But if you speak, please would you mind turning on your camera, because this is recorded and it will be good for people to see who is talking, if at all possible, please. Kathy and then Frankie.
Hey, thank you. I'm Kathy Armour. I'm one of the non-executive members of the ICB. I picked up on the report about the mental health complaints, which come through to both NSFT and the ICB relating to IFR delays. So with a little bit of knowledge about IFR non-mental health, there are strict turnaround times in relation to getting back. And I just wondered, is there a difference with the mental health ones that are not being adhered to?
The honest answer, Kathy, is I don't know if there is any kind of strict turnaround times. Frankie looked like she might have popped her hand up there a little bit.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, Kathy, we're actually doing some work to bring the mental health IFR panel in line with how the drugs and non-drug ones work, because it has run quite differently.
Right.
I think is Mark on the call? He might want to say a bit about it. Mark Payne.
I am, Frankie.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, you might want to say it yourself, but otherwise, we are aiming to bring them in.
Okay.
So I think it's important to be clear on this one. So the ones that they're classifying, or the complaints that have come through regarding IFR are not actually true IFR, because they've come through a different route. So we've had to set up a slightly different process. So they're more about individual funding agreements, but they're generally of a more common trend. So it's not sitting within the kind of standard three that go through IFR, then you get your policy designed off the back of that and the work. This is kind of some routine work that's coming through, but it's outside of any type of commission specialist services and stuff. So there's a piece of work going on, as Frankie says, just to kind of define exactly what should be going through the IFR and bringing together the in line with the meds and the true IFRs, and then making sure that there's a process for anything else outside of that sits alongside it, or within that process, to make sure that we get that turnaround time correct. So I think it's just about being really clear about where these actually sit, so we don't get confused. But I think everyone has a tendency to just push them into one pot, and class them all as IFR because that's what they see it as. But actually, it may not be truly an IFR in terms of actually what their real classification is once they come through.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Frankie.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to also reflect the fact that John's paper summarises the specific complaints we've got with sort of a title mental health or NSFT. But of course, there are other complaints regarding, that might be addressed to primary care, which actually relate to it. And we also have a lot of ongoing discussion between primary care and our main mental health provider as to what additional support they want. And it won't show through in this complaints paper, but it is a very regular theme at our monthly interface meetings where we have concern about. There is more support we would like to be available for both patients and for referrers into that service.
Thank you, Frankie. So is that back to how is communicated and how well people are informed of what is available and such things?
Yes, this is also about, as Alex mentioned, referrals being rejected and requests for advice, not necessarily getting advice.
And I presume that's escalated somewhere for it to be addressed.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for John before we go to Mark for strategic take on it? No more hands. John, thank you very much indeed. And yeah, keep raising those things. And yes, we'll look forward to hear more about what have we learned and what have we done different as a result of the complaints we're dealing with. It'll be good to shift into that direction. Thank you, John. Mark, over to you, please. Mark Payne, are you with us?
Yeah, I am, Aliona. Sorry.
Good.
So what exactly did you want from me in terms of just kind of a broad spectrum of what we've just spoken about, or anything specific?
Well, I have on the agenda a strategic mental health team. So
about the co-production paper?
Probably. Yeah, because I think Will was not available, was he?
No, William unfortunately couldn't join us. He is currently on his honeymoon, enjoying himself somewhere much warmer than we are currently experiencing at the moment here. So he did apologise profusely. So I'll do the best I can to give it justice to the paper that that they've put together. Obviously, we forwarded it around with the pack that came out, so I'm hoping people have had a time to kind of look at it and digest it. I think the key bits are really within this is just to kind of sort of show that actually there is a co-production strategy that's been developed between kind of the ICB and Rethink, following the work that Rethink did over the last 3 years with us in the community transformation space. We had some really positive results out of that work, and there was a really strong feeling that we needed to carry on some guise of co-production going into the future, which is where this came from. The strategy kind of outlines kind of the next steps over the next few years about how we further improve co-production in the system, but we also don't kind of keep it honed down to just one group of collective people, about how we widen that out to gain even more views. And I think that goes back to speaking to what Alex said about kind of making sure that we are much more inclusive in there. There is a national, an NHSE co-production guidance, which we can get hold of. I'll put in the link in the chat as well for people's perusal. But the main idea was just to bring it here because we promised to bring it here after this was completed. I believe it came in January originally, because the next step's then to go through exec management team to be signed off, and then we'd look to progress that as part of our work going forwards as a team.
Thank you, Mark. And you see, because you're covering for Will, I can't ask the question. So in a few words, tell me, what does co-production means to you? Will be unfair probably, but I'm sure if we had to go, okay, it's not unfair.
I will happily give you my take on what co-production means to me personally. It's about putting patients at the centre of it. So it's taking the patient and service user's voice, and now looking to take families' voice and carers into that mix as well, so that we can actually accurately reflect what someone's experience is, so that when we're commissioning or developing or changing services in the future, that we're taking those experiences to improve that pathway. The key bit for me is that we've always had to differentiate within this is the kind of what is we must do things we can't change and can't influence, because either there's a really clear medical or guidance piece that we have to follow, but what are the bits that we can change and we can influence to make that journey much more positive for that individual and much smoother. So that's, for me, I think the emphasis of what co-production is, and we've seen that play out in multiple conversations and service developments over time within the mental health world. A really small example of that is the mental health joint response car that we commissioned between East and NSFT, where we had a paramedic and a mental health practitioner on the vehicle. We went to co-production about whether we had a liveried vehicle with blue lights on it or whether we stuck to a unmarked vehicle with blue lights that were kind of concealed, in order so that people didn't, when they got called out and that vehicle turned up, what would give people the most amount of safety and also not being looked at. What came back was actually they wanted a liveried vehicle with the blue lights because they felt safer. They knew it was the right professionals turning up to help and support them, but they wanted to make sure it was marked up ambulance, not mental health. So that's what we did, and that's how we worked with that patient cohort group, so that we actually got what they needed to feel safe. It reflected an appropriate response, but equally it didn't make them feel within the community that everyone knew what was going on around them. So I think that's just a very small example of what we've achieved in co-production. Very, very small, but a really poignant conversation and a really important part to the individuals using that service.
Thank you for giving that example, Mark. It sort of makes it real to understand how we applied it. But I'm sure around the virtual room we have a number of people who have been involved in co-production. How does this strategy feels for you, and what experience you may have had of being involved with its development, please? I can see Tracy's hand up, but I'm just thinking, Emma, Alex, Andy, anything you may want to add to what we're discussing? So Tracy first, and then Emma, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a good strategy. So I thank you for bringing it, Mark. And I think certainly really useful to hope, understand the thoughts around this. I think it's good, but I also think we maybe could have been ambitious and think about co-production in a wider strategy across the ICS. I know this one's specifically for mental health, so just thinking about those opportunities, because we want to co-produce with all of those of lived experience. It's vitally important. I think we're certainly hearing from the work we're doing around community voices that those insights, you know, from all of those with lived experience would be really important. So I'm really keen that we can be more ambitious in the future with that. I also think specifically, you know, we know mental health services, there are challenges across the piece. So I think kind of those insights from this particularly, and that work is vitally important. It seems a really good piece of work. And I think you've worked with a really good, you know, sector in order to do that with Rethink, who've had all that experience. So that's just my perspective and my reflective really of it. But I'd like to see the scope bigger, I think, going forwards.
Thank you, Tracy. It's interesting because at some point, Mark, can you put me right, please, here? But the comms and engagement team, at some point, they worked on the co-production strategy. There was definitely a document. So I think we shouldn't be just throwing that baby with the water, so to speak. We need to relink what people have spent lots of time already developing. It just links to what Tracy said. Mark, do you want to come on that, and then I'll go to Emma? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes, absolutely, Aliona. And I think actually, note to self I was making there was perhaps it would be quite good at a future meeting to bring that exact topic back to just kind of revisit it. You know, we assume we're using it and doing it the right way, but I think it would be worth checking, because I think in some quarters we're possibly not. So let's do that check, and we'll.
Thank you.
Can we take that as an action, please, Rachel? I think that would be a good one. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Emma, and then Emma, and then Alex.
Yes, the VCSE Assembly and colleagues were involved in that, and it's a good bit of work. I suppose what I would just add to what Mark would say, which is going to be my answer if you come back to me later, Aliona, is the bit that's missing around that is involving providers in service specifications, because in the community hubs what you've got is you've got a non-clinical service, which is the right thing to do, but you've got people that need clinical input in a crisis, and a telephone call and a wait for 4 hours is not really appropriate or helpful. If we could have some kind of co-production around what a service spec looks like, and providers are there saying, this is not going to work for my customer who's sat in front of me in crisis, could we please have NSFT nurses that are based within those hubs? That's the sort of co-production that feels a bit missing sometimes when it comes to service specification. And I know that's really difficult because people will talk about conflict of interest all of the time, but if you don't have the providers around the table explaining exactly how it works in a building, for example, or those wait times, that's just a little bit that's missing. The work that Rethink have done on that mental health co-production stuff is brilliant, and they've really talked to lots of people. But for me, it was just that, bearing in mind what you wanted to know from me, it's that where are providers involved in what those services might look like, because that's the bit that's missing.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you. Emma Bagg, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. So Emma Bugg, I'm the Associate Director for North Norwich and South Norfolk Place. I just wonder if there's something that we ought to be a little bit more ambitious around as now we're operating as one system, with regards to the opportunities that integrated neighbourhood teams present, and see whether there's something broader that we could do there. So if we actually started to talk to people about what matters to you, rather than and actually took the personalised care plan as a really personalised opportunity, that co-production would start immediately from there, as opposed to necessarily what a service looked like, and then sort of grew on that. So I understand from one of my colleagues in my team this morning has been out with a number of providers and looked at 8 cases this morning where there was a really different outcome for people if you actually brought together different individuals in one space and included that person as well. So for me, there's just something about actually where can we identify that there's opportunities to sort of really potentially dramatically do different. Maybe we look at if there's an area within Norfolk that we could actually pick to how do we start to free up our workforce to be able to work in that way slightly differently, that I'm sure many of them would feel more empowered by. Also recognising where there are risks that we need to make sure that are taken into account. But yeah, for me, I just wonder if there's something that we could be a little bit more ambitious and creative, but in a respectful but yet innovative way.
Thank you, Emma. very wary of the time. If we can be succinct, please, Alex and then Suzanne.
I still feel we're slightly missing out on the trick here, because we can talk about co-production till the cows come home, but I think we still need to get some of the basics right. So, you know, if going back to what I was proposing earlier or suggesting we need to look at are those people that are slipping through the net, because if we fail them, they're going to be requiring very intensive services moving forwards. And I've got a formal requirement going into the NSFT have agreed to that they will report back on this request through the Learning from Deaths group by April of next year. So I would like to see that being brought back to this committee as well, because I think we need to get the basis, the foundation correct in order to build the really good bricks. And sorry about the big analogy, but you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Rachel, if we can just put that on forward planner, please, so we don't lose the sight of it. Suzanne.
Oh, hello, I'm Suzanne Meredith. I'm Deputy Director of Public Health at Norfolk County Council. And I'd just like to say, I was just reflecting on the fact that on one of these pages, I think it's page 7, it talks about social care and public health as well as part of some of the agencies that are involved in developing this strategy. And I was reflecting that we live in a very complex world, and it's not just the NHS or the voluntary sector. There's many other players in this field, but I was just reflecting on the fact that if you're a person in need of help and support, you don't actually care who it is who's commissioning the service. So I was thinking, oh, social care commission services, public health commission a few services that interact with some of these things we've talked about today. But I was thinking the importance of us working as an integrated care system really brings home to me the fact that why we're talking about it today as a system rather than as individual organisations. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you. Mark, please pass our thanks to Will and the team who worked on the strategy. I think is a very good starting point. We can evolve it, and picking up on the points made by a number of people, I think is something for you to take back and consider in the work going forwards, if that's okay, Mark. But yeah, thanks so much for bringing it to us. I'm going to go to Claire now, and we'll look at the issues from the place perspective. Claire, we are royally behind, so you'll have to do the magic.
Okay, leave it with me. I'll see what I can do. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Claire LeBourne. I'm Head of Place Development, Partnerships and Planning in Norwich for the ICB. And as Aliona explained, I'm here to talk about mental health from a place perspective. Could I have the slides up, please, Rachel?
Yeah, just bear with me. I'll bring them up for you, Claire.
Thank you.
I should have said my fault. We usually invite the presenters to drive their own slides.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But no, I didn't say it, so it's my bad. But I'm sure we'll be there in a minute, Rachel. Do you want to verbally introduce any thoughts whilst Rachel is loading it, please?
Well, the first slide, which I'll talk to in advance. Oh, here they come.
Excellent.
That's great. So the next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, that's an eye test for everybody. Okay, so by way of context, you probably can't see from this slide, but if you focus on the red bar chart there, mental health need is higher than the Norfolk and Waveney average in all 4 primary care networks in Norwich, and with some of our practices are supporting significantly more patients with long-term mental health conditions. Next slide, please. And this particular slide is looking at the communities in Norfolk and Waveney with greater levels of need for mental health support. And again, just focusing in on the map of Norwich on the right-hand side, you can see that we've got significant levels of mental health need across most of the city. So that was just by way of context. So next slide, please. So why am I here? What's the role of place? So in Norwich, as you can see here, as a local system, we work together with a big focus on integration of health and care services. And that's to ensure that we get the best operational delivery that we can with the resources that we've got. It's about delivering care in communities near where people live. improving people's outcomes, big focus on inequality, and around supporting primary care networks and the resilience of general practice. Just for clarity, I'm just talking, although the Norwich health footprint does actually span parts of South Norfolk and Broadland, I'm actually just focusing on Norwich today because I know those places have already presented to the committee. So next slide, please. So our approach at Place in Norwich is effectively threefold. We look at translating strategic ambitions into local delivery. We look at driving clinical and operational integration. And there's very much a focus on promoting prevention and early intervention and the creation of well-being, as I say, with a particular focus on reducing inequalities. Next slide, please. So what you probably want to know is, what are we actually doing at place level? Next slide. So at a strategic level, we've set up a Norwich Place all-age mental health strategy group, which brings together commissioners, providers, and our primary care colleagues to look at the issues and take a whole life approach, which we think is really important, rather than working in silos, to deliver the best outcomes that we can. Next slide. Our Health and Wellbeing Partnership in Norwich has physical and mental health and wellbeing as one of its key themes. And it's got a specific strategic priority around mental health and social isolation. And if you can see from the little blue box, there's a particular focus on men over 16, children and young people, older people, and our inclusion health groups. And I think what's really important is that this work is all underpinned by a commitment to identify unmet needs in our most vulnerable communities through collaborating with our partner experts and mapping existing provision, identifying the opportunities for smarter working together, and developing more innovative solutions. And next slide, please, just covers off a few examples. You've got some pictures there, a few examples of some of the local activity that's supporting the mental health work stream. We've got Men's Craft on there, who are a local charity supporting men experiencing mental health issues. Their Pit Stop programme has joined up with our Interact programme. I'll talk about that on a future slide. Matching volunteers with people who need help to maintain their gardens and create spaces that will benefit their health and well-being. That supports both the volunteer and the client. And so far, we've had 28 volunteers engaged in that work. We've got Age UK Norwich, who are providing befriending and activities within some of our sheltered housing schemes in our most deprived communities, helping to people age well with active and connected lives, reducing the risk of loneliness and social isolation, and targeting people who are on the Norwich Social Care Holding List. And then we've got Active Norfolk, who are delivering drop-in football sessions for men aged 18 plus struggling with their mental health, and Active Now, obviously working with local people to access physical activity to improve their health and well-being. So lots going on linked to the health and well-being partnership strategy. Next slide, please. Operationally, our focus is to drive integration at all levels to deliver the best patient care and improve the outcomes for the people that we serve. So you'll see there that we've got regular clinical meetings between our clinical directors, our GPs, and our NSFT clinical leaders. This is very much about supporting relationship building and providing a robust ongoing dialogue between the provider and the practices. It's a great opportunity to discuss the operational issues as they are happening and the challenges that we're experiencing, and to come up with joint solutions. And the focus of those clinical collaboration groups is really to try and drive service improvement and quality. We're also, next slide please, early this month, we brought together our local mental health providers to join up working in our practices to optimise delivery of the primary care mental health offer locally. So 8th of November, a whole group of us got together at the King's Centre in Norwich. Our mental health practitioners were there, who are hosted by NSFT. The mind recovery workers were there. And it was a great opportunity to get those people all working together, clarifying the roles and remits, building relationships, and most importantly, the foundations of MDT working to really deliver the best outcomes. We also support the wellbeing and development of our frontline staff through our Tier 3 initiative. As you've seen the slides, I won't take you through that, but we started last year. and it's really been trying to build relationships that have been impacted by COVID, making sure that we're out and about in the communities that we serve. And it's a great opportunity for our staff to get to know each other and to upskill. And we've got some details on the next slide of how, if you're interested, how you can get in touch and learn more about that. And finally, next slide, please, Rachel. In terms of addressing the wider determinants of well-being, and I think much of our work at Place focuses on tackling the underlying causes or the wider determinants of health and well-being. And we've used what funding we've had invested in our local partnerships to bring together cross-sector system partners. I'm thinking Norwich City Council, our VCSE colleagues, to meet these needs and to reduce health inequalities, recognising that 39% of the residents of Norwich live in core 20 neighbourhoods. I won't go into huge detail. You can see what those projects are. One is around people whose health and well-being is impacted by their home environment or their housing situation, and the other is to support people who have got hoarding issues. That's a very brief overview. We'll be coming to your meeting in January to showcase these projects and to tell you a bit more about our collaborative approaches to meeting the needs of our local people and communities. So we look forward to seeing you all then. Any questions is the final slide.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you. It does look like there's a range of activity going on in Norwich. The one thing which sort of, and Mark Payne is not going to be surprised that I'm going to go into that, but we do have the rest hubs, just as Emma demonstrated with the STEAM cafes. We have the rest hub in Norwich, and I was surprised not to see it featured in your presentation, bearing in mind that they also provide the crisis hub and they're supposed to be working at NSFT. So I'm just wondering what's happening to that. Are you aware of the rest hub? Sorry, Claire.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were talking to me or to Mark on that question.
I just made a reference to Mark because Mark had to many times provide information as to how those hubs are performing and so on. So I'm just making connections. But
no, absolutely. Sorry. Yes, I mean we were in some ways fortunately sport for choice by some of the stuff that we've got to talk about. But yes, absolutely, the rest hub in Norwich is part of the local landscape of provision. Our social providers, our social prescribers, our integrated care coordinators, you know, that will be a really important resource that we're using. And Mind are one of the providers that comes to our regular all age strategy meetings. So that's how we can promote all of the different services, all age, a bit like frailty. We're really keen that everything is all age. And so that's where we've got those strategic meetings where we can join all of that up, as well as getting the operational staff together as well. So thank you. Yes, we are aware of it.
Good, thank you. Any further questions for Claire, please? Tracy.
Yeah, I'm not going to catch Claire out, but it's just a huge amount of work, and thanks for Claire for all the stuff that's happening in Norwich around kind of that mental health and working close to communities and working actually with all those important partners. I know it's been challenging. We've had one PCN, we've now got 4. Just working all that through has been really challenging. So a huge thanks to Claire. Just noting, Claire, that we do have that kind of population health need where the needs are higher because of the incidence of those populations with a mental health need there. So from your perspective, how can we ensure that we are kind of, everybody needs something, but how can we ensure that those people perhaps have a bit more, if we're taking a true kind of a population health management approach to that? What do you think would support that from a kind of strategic perspective?
Well, I think we've already had a really good example of that, Tracy, in that with the phase 2 of the enhanced recovery workers, we worked with our strategic mental health colleagues, and instead of doing the equal shares approach in terms of where those resources were going to be allocated, we did a piece of work with Tim Winters and BI colleagues to actually, take that understanding of mental health need and to use that in order to allocate resources differently. And I know that's a challenging thing to do, but if we're actually going to address the inequalities that we know exist, then we do need to make sure that we target our resource to the areas where we have the poorest outcomes, and we know where they are.
Indeed. Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Tracy. I can't see any more hands up, so I do need to bring this item to a close, but I'll give you patient experience also from the PCN's perspective and community mental health nurses, practitioners, and within the PCNs. Good outcomes. People do enjoy the model, and it does seem to work, and the response time is good. So I'm only talking about one particular medical practice within one PCN, but nonetheless is Norwich-based, and what I hear is very good. So well done, and I do hope that that sort of resonates across the whole of Norfolk and Waveney. But on a good journey. Emma, Alex, anything else you want to add to my question from the start? You already mentioned them, so I'm sure Rachel will pick it up, but anything else you would like this committee or anybody else on the committee in the area we just discussed on the mental health provision, anything else you would like us to make sure we action? Emma?
I think for me, Ali, the only other thing that staff talk about on a fairly regular basis is just thinking about Frankie's comments about primary care, is that primary care send referrals that are honest and open about the level of complexity that people have. Because very often, as you've seen in the video, people are referred for something that you think is quite small. You allocate half an hour of time to, a recovery navigator, and actually what you end up unpacking is quite a lot. And there's absolutely no way primary care didn't know that that was all sat there. So there's something there about just making sure that people feel happy and confident to put, a full honest referral in, and that you're not going to get turned away if it's very, very complex.
Because at the end of the day, you'll find a way of getting the additional help for the complex needs, aren't you, Emma?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what's nice about, all the stuff that Claire's talked about being place-based, is everybody's there trying to do the right thing for those people with complex needs, and everyone's around the table having those conversations on a fairly regular basis. So it actually doesn't matter how terrible or complex that referral is, that you've got everyone in the right place now to have those conversations.
Good. Thanks so much. Mark, your hand is down now, so I'll go to Alex and then Alex.
Thanks. I put in the chat that I would echo Emma's request, but I would also echo, I sort of like to see a parity of access across the whole of Norfolk and Waveney, because at the moment I think it's rather dispersed and disjointed.
Thank you, Alex. Mark, you're not coming back? No?
No, I was just conscious of time, but what a rich conversation. And I think what's really important is we follow up on this. And that was the one point I was going to make. But yeah. I think, Frank, we do make the mistake often. And I'm so glad that, Frankie, you said it, of thinking mental health, NSFT provider, and that's how, but it's not that, it's everyone's business. And I think that was, that's really powerful and important.
Correct. And it took us quite a bit of time, but it is a very important issue to discuss and understand. And Rachel, I do hope you'll pick up all the actions. I think our action log is going to be much longer next time from this particular item anyway. Thank you, everybody, for all your contributions. Okay, we'll move on to community voices. And Shirley, I'm going to sort of suggest that we cut it shorter slightly because we don't have the time. So as succinct as you can with your team, please. But over to Shirley and Amrita and a few other people. You can introduce each other. You know each other.
Thanks, Aliona. Hi, everyone. Shirley Ames. I'm the Head of Health Inequalities and VCSE Partnering at the ICB. I was just going to introduce the item and pass you very quickly on to Steve and Alison, who have kindly joined us today from Suffolk County Council. So you're not going to be hearing from me and Amrita today. You're going to hear from our partners directly about one of the projects we're delivering around Healthy Hearts. In the paper you've received, it gives a bit of an update of the position of community voices more generally and the projects that we've got in pipeline and are planning on looking at in the future. So I'll leave you with that and pass you over to Steve and Alison. Amrita, at the moment you're presenting the black screen rather than the full screen.
Thanks, Shelley. Hi everyone, I'm Steve Gray. I'm Place Programme Lead for Public Health and Community, Suffolk County Council. And I'll just take you on a whistle-stop tour, as I'm assuming everyone has read through the slides.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So I'll just give a few points. I've got my colleague here who's just going to go through the analysis part of it, just a few slides, but I'll start off with a short programme overview. So this is a 2-year programme work with partners across the system to address health inequalities in Lowestoft. So we're looking at CVD risk factors, which is hypertension. We've got funding, but we've also working very closely with partners across the system, and they're providing additional funding and in-kind contributions, which has been great. So our outcomes we're looking for are reduced morbidity and mortality for cardiovascular disease, increase diagnosis of hypertension, optimise hypertension management, reducing barriers to accessing healthcare, empower Lowestoft residents to make healthy behaviour choices which have had impact on heart health. So this is a phased approach. So we're talking about community voices here. Next slide, please, Samarita. So yes, community voices has been critical for us in understanding the community's view of cardiovascular disease and hypertension, understanding what they think of in terms of healthy behaviours. So we've worked through Suffolk Community Foundation with the organisations below, so Disability Advice North East, Kirkley People's Forum, YMCA Trinity, Women Like Me and Home Start in Suffolk. Next slide, please. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Community Voices project. So it's looking at face-to-face engagement, so across different hubs, across the town. It's kind of these organisations are working in a business as usual way, but also having these heart health conversations, which are then fed back into a lovely little dashboard, which we found really, really helpful. Next slide, please. I'll just pass you over to Alison Matthews in our Knowledge and Intelligence team. She's just going to take you through a few analysis slides.
Thanks for the introduction, Steve. So community voices analysis we undertook using the COM-B behaviour change model, which is from the social sciences, and says that there might be there will be individual reasons for each person that are preventing them from making a change to themselves, and that these can be broadly categorised into 3 areas. So capability, motivation, and opportunity can lead to or prevent a behavioural change. Next slide, please. As you saw in the notes, we had 98 conversations recorded with 219 individuals engaged through community voices. I then analysed the feedback and recordings that had been made and tried to categorise the comments into those 3 groups using COM-B. And you can see for each of those 3 areas, they're subdivided. For example, physical capability, which might be you've got limited mobility, and psychological capability, not understanding that there was a link. Next slide, please. Between diet, for example, and heart health. Opportunity, again, do you have the physical ability, you know, you're in the right location, and also are you getting the right support socially to make a change? And there was some, I guess the key thing to say is I was doing the analysis, somebody else might group things slightly differently. The key point to make is that it wasn't, as some of my work often is, turning things into percentages and just giving one bullet point. You can see from this, one of the great values of using community voices was the conversations that we had as a team. And I could say, well, I was picking up this, or there was this one really powerful quote, or there's a range of views around this aspect. So it's really good at getting those shades of grey and tones that we wouldn't necessarily get in a more conventional tick box exercise. So I will highlight the quote on this one, which was, before losing the weight, they hadn't given any information a second thought, only how annoying medical staff are when talking to people that are overweight. They always felt judged. Since losing the weight, and this was somebody that had decided, well, nobody else is going to help us, we're going to have to do it ourselves, they felt much healthier and determined to keep up with eating healthier so they could enjoy life more. Next slide, please. Again, motivation, it's automatic or reflective, and there are positives and minuses. You can look at the slides in more detail. Next slide, please. I think that might be done. Back to
Thanks,
Steve.
Alison. Thank you. Yeah, that was a massive piece of work. You know, thanks, Alison, for that. So yeah, so what? You know, so what? We've got all that information. It's fantastic information. What do we do with it? So this kind of brings us on to a raft of interventions that the community have helped us to kind of, you know, put in place. So next slide, please. Thank you very much. So I won't go through this too much, but it's basic high-level overview, patient pathway. We made sure that we were mapping everything that's going on in the area regarding heart health, to make sure that we could, you know, fit snugly and nicely into that kind of that what's already happening, and make sure everyone else knew what we were intending to do as well. So it's working across that whole system, and getting that mapping was really important. Next page, please. So this is one of our main interventions. This is a CSU health check station. So, you know, the community voices, you know, there's some quotes there. So it allows people to monitor changes. So no appointments needed. People didn't want to have to go to the GP or clinical setting. It's there in a place. This is at Lowestoft Library. We've placed this. And most respondents were recorded would use blood pressure monitors, health checks in the community spaces. So hence we went down this route. It's a free machine. It takes 4 minutes. You may have well seen them. There's lots of places to put now. I think SNE have got 17 machines now. But they're really good, really all singing, all dancing, nice health check, nice and easy to carry out. Next slide, please. This gives us a few results. So this is our kind of first 6 weeks of it sitting in the library. We had 302 health checks, so 245 separate participants. And you can see there 17.8% of participants stated they were smokers, 64.5% participants were overweight or obese. 69 health checks triggered a GP call to action, which I think, you know, is a pretty high figure for first 6 weeks. So thank you. Next slide, please. So this is our Feel Good Suffolk advisor. We have in Suffolk, we have our behaviour change model is a kind of offer which is put in place by the district and boroughs with support from Suffolk County Council. And so this we kind of part funded with East Suffolk Council, a Feel Good Suffolk advisor with a healthy heart remit, working in Lowestoft. I think I'm not going to go through all this, but it is a really exciting part for me because we can really use that community voices insight for this Feel Good Suffolk to hit the Feel Good Suffolk advisor to hit the ground running, and really kind of work in that community and build on that knowledge as well. And we're looking at perhaps community health hubs, and they'll be able to do blood pressure checks, etc. So this is really exciting because we can develop this as we go. Next slide, please. This is a little bit more sort of technical. This is an expert care. This is a hypertension prescribing solution that the primary care network are using. So we've part funded with Norfolk and Waveney ICB to have this in place for the primary care network. And it's an AI tool, and it kind of it looks across patient data, and it helps to. There's a online pharmacist linked to this as well, so it really takes the emphasis and the work out for the GP to hit those kind of targets for hypertension. So it reduces GP time spent on hypertension and contributes to a significant reduction in heart attacks and strokes. If you want to know more about this, you know, please contact me. My details are at the end. It's quite complicated to share very quickly in one slide. Next slide, please. So we had a wraparound comms model for this. We've got this was a social media campaign, as well as we had advertisement on various buses, routes around the town, in the Lowestoft Journal as well. So it was a really big piece of work. We've also got stuff printed up for the Feel Good Suffolk advisor to take round. She's got some banners and some leaflets that we can use as well. And we're also really keen to tap into free resources, so I got hundreds of leaflets and booklets from British Heart Foundation and various different organisations for free. So that was really useful, and we kind of flooded the area with those really. Next slide, please. So this is just very early days kind of effects of the campaign. So using the Facebook rated posts, this is 10,789 on Nextdoor, which is a free resource anyway, which is fantastic. So we use that going forwards. 33,846, and this was very early days as well. I think this was about week 6 or 7 as well. But there's various different. The media got a hold of this. We had newspapers, we had radio, all covering the event. So it was really good. We had this really amazing launch event, which was fantastic. Lots of councillors and people attending. Next page, please. I think that is it. So yeah, I think that was Was that really quick, Aliona? Did I do all right?
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Alison. And that just shows how, very good example of community voices in practice. Mark remembers the so what I constantly ask, and this is the so what, but also the analysis Alison did, I think, is quite insightful. And like anything, and when we put solutions in place, unless we understand the root cause, you can't get the right solution. So that analysis is definitely contributory to all of that. So well done for the work involved. Alison, you put your hand up.
I just wanted to say the wonderful thing about this project as an analyst, I spend quite a lot of time saying this is what the evidence is showing.
Yeah,
it's
indeed.
often really difficult to see how it made a difference. I love this because I can see what happened differently.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Beth. I on behalf of the committee, I wish you all the best with the project, and let's hope it is long lasting. Shirley, Amrita, can I come back to you? We have something around asthma, children and young people's asthma.
Yeah, so we did share a paper in the report. We've now concluded a CYP Core 20 asthma project, which is another example really of working at a place level, so alongside our place colleagues, but also with our children and young people team this time. So we delivered some work around children and young people asthma with Norfolk Community Foundation, I think Suffolk Community Foundation, Active Norfolk actually, because we were looking at whether we might be able to utilise trusted communicators as in the physical activity workforce with young people to have conversations about asthma risk, etc. So we've shared the report that was undertaken from an evaluation perspective, just so that you could see again that kind of feedback that we're seeing. We're a little bit, we're not quite as far ahead with the so what yet, so we're working with our children and young people team, and we've got plans to engage with the Children and Young People Strategic Alliance around the so what of the findings for that one. Healthy Hearts was a bit unique because we had front loaded some resources and investments then put into the so what, whereas sometimes with the community voices projects it's then about how do we align resources after we've done the engagement work, or maybe do things differently, or think about our pathways differently, future redesign, etc. So some really great findings, a really positive project in terms of looking at the wider voluntary sector as well as those physical activity workforce, so some opportunities identified there for the future. And we're looking now at what we might do with the children and young people team in the future around the wait lists for neurodivergent young people, etc. So we've got a pipeline project that we're working on with the children and young people team to do next as well.
Excellent. Thank you, and well done. Yes, Frankie.
Yeah, it's really great to see these coming to fruition and seeing the impact is lovely. I've got two questions. One is how you choose which projects, how you prioritise. There's so many millions of things. So that's the first thing. And I hope you're going to tell us you do it in line with our Health and Equality Strategic Framework for Action. But you said first thing, so how do you choose what to prioritise? And secondly, we talked previously at the PHM and HI board about integrating the use of community voices with our WOW bus and actually having a coordinated approach to really see if we can get the most out of it. I just wanted to have progress was going in there as well.
Thanks, Frankie. So in terms of the prioritisation of the projects, being really honest, to date, we've been quite reactive to where there's opportunities around investment. So it's non-recurrently funded, and we've had NHS England funding opportunities, or there's been place-based projects, or we've had some transformation investment that sits with like the women's health work. So we've had women's health funding come through and needed to think about how we engage around those things. So far, we have been quite reactive to where there are resources, as opposed to proactive. So one of the things that we've been working on as a steering group is thinking about the joint forward plan objectives and the health inequalities framework. Everything we do with voices is underpinned by the framework because it is really about hearing from those seldom heard voices. We've prepped a paper actually for EMT coming soon about the potential projects that we might like to take forward as an organisation, because there's more opportunity than we've got resource to do. But we really want to pick 2 or 3 projects next year that align really well with our strategic ambitions in the joint forward plan and be more proactive in seeking the resources to enable that to happen. So cardiovascular disease is one of them, speaking to the plan care team aligned with all the CVDR work and everything that we're doing at the regional level. Children, young people I mentioned earlier in the wait list. That was something that they were keen to do. And we've also been talking to our primary care team about primary care access more generally and the primary care strategy and how we might align with that ambition in the joint forward plan. So we're trying to be more proactive and strategic in thinking about how we prioritise, but obviously that does come then with this question of, well, how are we going to resource this, which can be quite challenging. And then the second question was the integration of the WOW bus. So we're thinking through the options for the WOW bus at the moment, and have put that through the prioritisation process in this current round to think about how we invest in it from April, because the current contract concludes at the end of March, and we're aligning the governance arrangements. So we've brought those together to think about community voices and the WOW bus as one model. So as an example, how do we turn the bus to face cardiovascular disease prevention and CVDR in the future and ensure that community voices sits alongside that? And we've been thinking about having the CSU machine that Steve just talked about. We've been scoping getting that onto the bus in the future so that we have one of those as a mobile unit that goes around the system, and align the voluntary sector and the 50 odd charities that we've worked with so far into that model. So we're working through it at the moment as a set of options, and as a commissioning plan, if you like, from April onwards. But we do need to think about, again, how we resource that from next year.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands up, so I'm going to bring this item to a close. Shirley and Steve and Alison, thank you very much again indeed. Yeah, good luck with the next stage. And Shirley, let's hope some of those things are taken forward you just mentioned. Well done. I'm going to go to Chris Williams now on communications and engagement update. I think, Chris, you have a quick verbal update for us, haven't you?
I do. I'll be very quick. So I'm Chris Williams. For those that don't know me, I'm the new head of communications and engagement. I've been in post for a couple of months now. I've previously worked in the comms team at the ICB, so I'm not completely new to the organisation or the team. I was just going to highlight two things. One, communications, one, engagement. So we've recently launched our biggest communications campaign of the year. So it's our Warm and Well campaign, which runs over winter. So we plan the campaign in partnership, primarily with Norfolk County Council, although a wide range of partners are involved in delivering the campaign. So we share information with health partners, councils, the voluntary sector. Incidentally, I was on a call recently with my peers from the east of England, and I was surprised to find this was actually quite unusual, and that other ICBs don't jointly plan the winter campaign in the same way that we do, which I thought was interesting. Just in terms of the core themes for this year's campaign, it's about choosing the right health service, so kind of reduce pressure on A&E by encouraging people to visit and use other health services, so NHS 111 and pharmacy. There's a whole stream around vaccinations, so encouraging people to have their flu, COVID-19 booster and their RSV vaccine if eligible. There's a big bit of work around hardship support and trying to improve awareness and uptake of hardship support and services, including promoting access to the pension credit if residents are if they're eligible. In terms of mental health, there's a whole section around supporting people to care for their mental health and signposting to resources. There's a whole lot around sort of self-care tips as well, and looking out for older and vulnerable residents, friends, neighbours, family. And there's a section on prevention. So it's about reminding people of the practical steps they can take to be prepared for winter and help prevent health problems from developing and kind of getting worse. In terms of audiences, it's everyone in Norfolk and Waveney, but particularly residents aged 18 to 65 living in deprived areas, vulnerable residents aged 65 and over, and their relatives and neighbours of vulnerable residents. And just in terms of channels, it's a multi-channel approach. So there's social media advertising, Google advertising, press advertising, outdoor digital screens, radio, press releases, printed information in your Norfolk, all sorts. So that's the kind of the big campaign. I guess I'd just like to thank partners on the call for their help in promoting the campaign. The other thing I was going to talk about then is the 10-year plan engagement. You're probably well aware the government has launched a big engagement exercise to inform the new 10-year health plan. The engagement is centred around the three changes we're becoming familiar with. So that's analogue to digital, hospital to community, and treatment to prevention. I guess there are three ways that the views of people from Norfolk and Waveney can inform the development of the plan. The first is that anyone can respond online, so member of the public, staff, organisations, but it is worth noting that those views will inform the development of the national plan. However, we won't see a local cut of the results. So this means that we won't be able to use the information to inform our local plans, like our joint forward plan or the systems integrated care strategy. The second is there's a mechanism to submit the results of engagement that's been done over the past 2 years. So we are looking at what we can do with that. And the third is that they've developed a workshop in a box that's been developed as a way to gather feedback. So this box gives you everything you need to run a 2-hour session with a group of people. And we're kind of developing a plan to use this locally. For example, we're looking at running with some of our established groups like the Integrated Care Partnership, our place boards, the Health and Wellbeing Partnerships. Tracy Williams on the call has lots of contacts with health inclusion groups and has got great ideas about how we could share the workshop in a box with them to see if they could run it with their groups. Similarly with patient participation groups and others. So we're effectively trying to get others to run the workshop on our behalf, and then to share the feedback with us as well as upload it to the national portal. This way we can use the information locally too. Just in terms of timescales, all the feedback has to be uploaded to the national portal by the 14th of February. That was all I was going to mention, but I'm obviously happy to take any questions on any of that.
Thank you, Chris. Does anyone got any questions for Chris? It seems like he has a handful at the moment to run with the engagement exercise, and I do hope we get some insight into the local needs, so to speak, through this toolbox you're talking about. That's our best bet probably to get the information locally. So I hope all that goes well, Chris, and you're able to implement your plan. I can't see any hands up. So Chris, I will say thank you for updating us, and yeah, we'll look forward to see what you may learn through the engagement exercise. It will be good at some point to get an update. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Mark, we're coming to you, and I'm very aware of your not being very well and your throat and all that. So give us the headlights.
I'll be that's very kind. Thank you. And I'll try and get you some time back as well. So just very briefly, it's slightly frustrating. Every year we talk about winter planning as if it's a surprise for us all, but of course it isn't. You know, we plan our seasonal resilience, I prefer as a better title, but ultimately this is about how do we keep our population safe and well over the winter period, where health and care services typically have higher demands placed on them. So Marcus Bailey, our resilience director, has shared some slides as part of the pack, but I think the key thing for me to flag really is on page 7 and 8, or slide 7 and 8. Those are the areas that we'll be focusing on. That's based on where we felt we've had the greatest impact historically in the past, in previous plans. As I said, we're not allowed to call it winter anymore. It's half-2. That's why it's being half-2, rather the same thing to me. But we have had some success in previous years. So just by way of example, you know, linking back to that, how do we keep our population safe? Those people that need an ambulance, getting that ambulance to them as quickly as possible. Last year, the category 2, so this is for people requiring an ambulance with a suspected stroke, heart attack and things of that nature, so serious issues. We had Norfolk and Waveney had the second worst ambulance response time across the east of England. At the end of last month, we had the best category 2 ambulance response time. So much of the content of the plan that's been shared with you is already having an impact, and it's really important that we continue to support all colleagues across health and care to make sure that we get this delivered. I shouldn't finish with an apology, but I have to. I didn't spot till too late that slide 7, I failed the test. We failed the test around the acronyms, the NHS acronyms, where we've got WIC instead of walk-in centre, SDEC instead of same day and emergency care and things like that. So we will tidy that up to follow. But they are all essentially schemes and things that we have in place to support our population. But very happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mark. You just preempted, because I was going to say, for those of us who don't quite know what those stand for, can you just decipher? But you picked it up. So thank you. Anything worries you, Mark, and all the plans we have in place? Is there anything which really gives you a concern?
I'm worried every year, Aliona, because I want to make sure that it's always safe. This isn't a point in. This is point in time rather than this work is ongoing. I do worry about capacity and strain on services, be that voluntary sector services or statutory services, those pressures that we see right across the board. We have got examples, we've seen some today, about how prevention can really support people avoiding that more acute presentation. It's just as important that we focus there as well. So yeah, people tend to think of ambulances and hospitals when we talk about urgent emergency care, but it's so much more than that. So me for one, particularly on the capacity element, making sure that we support all areas of our system, including voluntary sector, social care teams, and out in the community and primary care are going to be really important.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions from anybody for Mark or observations? Mark, I can't see any hands up, so people are clearly concerned about your sore throat, leaving you in peace. But I do hope that the plans work according to the plan. I'm sure we're doing our best to keep our people safe, but I hope the system is also set up to pick up when things go wrong. And I need a note from you to say, yep, we have a resilience plan in place, and we know what we'll be doing. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Frankie, over to you, please, for the Population Health Inequalities Board update, please.
Thank you, Chair. So you've heard in earlier items just how much work is going on in this space, but we try and keep the assurance report very, very tight. So the first thing to provide assurance on is that we're really in the implementation phase now. Last year was about getting the building blocks and building the strategies. Now we're actually putting them into action, as Shelley and Tracy have shown earlier on. The population health management software procurement is now complete, and we should be announcing the successful person as soon as those contracts are signed imminently. The equality health impact assessments, I'm so pleased and proud. Last time it hadn't made the papers cut off, but we'd just gone live. This is now business as usual, and it's fantastic. So when whatever the change, now the equality and quality impact assessment is done by a panel with external and independent scrutiny, rather than people marking their own homework saying it's fine, definitely doesn't have any negative impacts. So it's much more robust and getting really good feedback to people on that. We've now got Tim, who's lovely to have him on the meeting today for the first time as our new chair of the VCSC Assembly. We are rolling out health inequalities training, and it's been really good to see the new cohort of Core 20 ambassadors. We've had lots and lots of people putting themselves forward, wanting to go. So we're waiting to hear back from NHS England who's going to be successful. But you asked about health inequalities isn't just the ICB, it's all of us. And so getting those ambassadors embedded right across our system will make a huge difference. Successful bid for Volunteering for Health, which was great. A bit of a showcase at the ICS conference, which was also great. And one thing to escalate really is just to raise awareness about the Population Insights and Population Explorer. So there is amazing data available now, and we are Suzanne and Josh and the team are going out to each place board to say, here's your data, use it. PCN level, practice level. It's really, really important data that people can get to grips with and act on. And finally, in terms of the risks, as Mark said at the top of the meeting, our BAF scores are unchanged, but that doesn't mean the risks themselves or the mitigation of activity hasn't happened. But we have been able to close one risk, which was about procurement of the PHM software. That's no longer a risk because we've just procured it. And we've been able to reduce 2 of our risk scores. One, because we've got the governance in place with our working groups for health inequalities. And secondly, because the equality impact assessments process is now properly happening live. So we've been able to reduce it.
Well done, Frankie. Thank you. Frankie, in terms of the ICA's population insights, you just gave examples where Suzanne is doing good work, taking it to place and so on and so forth. How are the other small organizations, I'm just thinking VCAC, for example, who do they contact if they want to get some of those insights, and if they're not party to any place meetings or partnership meetings and so on? How do they get about finding it out, the information, please?
What would be the best way, Suzanne, do you think? By Pete and the BI team, or?
I think so. I think Pete and the BI team organise access to that Explorer dashboard that we've mentioned today. But of course, if they want to undertake any specific population health management projects, then please do come to our team for advice and support as well.
Thank you, Suzanne. And Tim Gardner, I'll come to you in a minute, but if we can take that and communicate with the Assembly to the sector so we can start connecting the dots, will be great. Tracy.
Yeah, it's just a point more than anything else. I think in respect, I think Shelley's put it in the chat too. We're really pleased with the core 20 plus ambassadors. We've had the most in the region, and certainly those ambassadors, all 45 of them across sector. They're from the voluntary sector, they're from our district councils, they're from healthcare providers and primary care, which is brilliant. So they will be forming some of those kind of advocates for the Health Inequalities Framework for Action, and they'll all have a kind of a project to do around health inequalities improvement, and we're hoping to align them to our existing programmes of work as well. So that's really positive. I just saw Alex asked about the health inequalities training, which is being overseen by the primary care workforce team, and more comms will come out about that to primary care generally over the coming weeks. So we'll be launching that really quickly as well.
Thank you, Tracy. And where would people learn about who the ambassadors are?
Well, I think ambassadors of organisations will probably do their own approaches to the Health and Equality League. So it's not kind of publicly available information, but I think those that will kind of make themselves clear in their own organisation. And we're going to bring a network together across our system as well to support them. And there's a regional network as well. So it's really positive that we've got so many.
Good. Well done. Thank you. Karen and then Shelley.
Hi, I just wanted to sort of thank Shelley and Tracy. We had an ICB all staff event last week. Well, you were there as well, Aliona. And the presentation that they gave around health inequalities was my kind of real take home, I think, in terms of we can't not do anything, if that's simple. Yeah, we can't not do anything about it. So it was just a thank you. And I hope that we're picking that up within the ICB. Thank you.
Yeah, Karen, thank you. And that was part of why I asked the question, how do people get all that information in an easy way? So well done for mentioning. Thank you. Shirley.
Yes, Ali, I'm just going to mention that my team are now working on a ICS intranet page to try and get a bit more information out about the work that we are doing. And as Tracy mentioned, we are planning to bring that network together of ambassadors in the current cohort as well as the previous two, and we're going to put an open invite out to grow that network of ambassadors at a local level. And I guess we can speak to them about their appetite to get their information on that website and be available, particularly if they've got specialisms or understanding about particular groups, maybe support our EHAA training, etc. So I think we need to really understand the network of individuals that we've got and where their interests lie. But from the the contact that Tracy and I have had in the last couple of weeks, we've got some really great ambassadors across our system in various different voluntary sector, local government, the trusts, providers, etc. So a real cross sector of representation. So it would be good, maybe they're all running projects as part of that cohort 3, so they were all being asked to deliver inequalities projects. That's 45 inequalities projects that they'll be looking to deliver over the next year, maybe getting them here or to the PHNI board in the future to talk a little bit about the work that they're doing might be good, just to give them a bit of a platform for their work as ambassadors.
Indeed. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Shelley. I can't see any more hands up. So Frankie, thank you so much for the report, as always, to the point and very clear. And thank you for the work in the background. Thank you. Okay, team, I'm going to come to you late, but better late than never. Welcome, welcome to this committee. Congratulations to gaining the role and taking over or taking forwards the work which Emma has begun for us. So we can thank Emma for what she has done, and you now sort of continuing with that trajectory. So yeah, welcome to the committee meeting. Team, as I said at the beginning, we read the papers, so give us the highlights, but quickly introduce yourself first, please.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Tim Gardner. I'm the new chair of the Voluntary Sector Assembly. So yeah, taking over from Emma. And I think obviously you've all read the papers, you've the executive summary, I think pretty much says it all. I think this is week 7, so it's about trying to grasp everything that's been going on and everything that we want to do moving forward, and then how do we kind of communicate that? I think, as part of the papers, you'll be able to see that there is a plan, and the idea is to try and execute that plan. And I think about how we go about doing that. So there's a lot of things around kind of terms of reference, around governance. And I think just in respect of this meeting, the things that have been said, I have been quite unusually quiet. So you'll probably hear me talk a lot more in future meetings. But I think a lot of people have said some really important things. We've had some really good examples from Emma around how the voluntary sector supports the people that are here. We've heard about how do we work across our integrated care system, which includes the voluntary sector. We've talked about data and how do people access that data and those within the voluntary sector. And I see the assembly as kind of a two-pronged approach, really, in terms of one, about how do, as a sector, we kind of collaborate and co-produce together that involves the voluntary sector. So there is going to be some work on how do people in this call request someone from the voluntary sector assembly to be part of those conversations. Emma mentioned about making sure that we're part of conversations earlier and at the beginning, and I think that's a really important part of what the assembly is there to do, and making sure that we are part of that. The second part is around communication to the voluntary sector itself, and making sure that it's a two-way conversation, and that we can feed in what we think are important from a voluntary sector point of view into the ICB, into committees like this one, but also make sure that actually, you know, things like Frankie mentioned around some of that data and some of the amazing work that is kind of going on is also filtered down into the wider voluntary sector organisations, not necessarily those that are just represented on the board, but also in a wider sense, so that, you know, the gentleman who runs a walking group in Great Yarmouth at his garage might actually hear about some of the health inequalities work that's going on, and actually, you know, he might not be interested in being a commissioned service within the ICB, but certainly might want to refer to those who are running those services. So I think it's about making sure that we have a really good communication plan moving forward, to really shout about what we do, and I think really pushing this forward positively. So I don't think I need to talk too much. I think you've seen that there's already some really interesting work ongoing. We've already met informally as a voluntary sector assembly board, so got to meet other members. I've been having conversations outside with wider voluntary sector. We've also hosted an integration round table event in which many of on the call were there, which I think gave us a really good insight into how we all feel, and I think a really good push around actually let's move this forward, and I think from ICB partners and ICS partners a really good feeling that this is something that we want to do, and there's a real big push on it from all sides to make this work. So I won't continue to talk too much because I'll talk forever, but yeah, any questions? But nice to be here, and hopefully there'll be a slightly better update in the coming months when we have a bit of a communications plan and kind of moving things forward with the plan.
Thank you, Tim. Yes, we read with interest the minutes and the outcomes from the round table. Very good starting point for the phase 2, so to speak. And what you said about engaging with the wider sector, not just those around the table on the assembly, is paramount if we're to make this successful and actually get the voices of the sector. So I wish you all the best in taking the assembly to the next stage. Our next meeting is 27th of January, and I'm just wondering, we'll have to plan this, but it'll be good to get more defined sort of plan specifics as to how the assembly is going to operate when you have your formal sort of meeting and so on, and what the plans are. So I'm not sure how the 27th of January fits with your assembly plans, but let us know, because it will be good to get a sort of more robust update when you have your feet under the table for a little bit longer.
No worries.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Any questions for Tim, please? No. Good. Well, Tim, we'll look forward to hear from you very soon. Thank you. Thank you for joining today. May I come to Andy and Alex? Health Watch update, please. Andy?
Thank you, Aliona. If you hadn't had the IT gods battling you in the beginning, you'd be on track, wouldn't you? I'll keep it very short because Rachel very kindly will send a one-page update that I've sent her after the meeting. There are 6 items. I'll be very brief. One is around elective care. There's a survey that's underway, which we started working on, co-producing with all 3 hospitals on our patch, including the Paget, back in January this year, and it will continue through to January next year. The Paget has been really supportive, as has West Suffolk Hospital, so we're doing well there, just having to chase up with Ipswich. We're about to publish a COPD report, and you can find a link in the paper that Rachel will send around. We've also been working on a co-production piece with Suffolk North East Essex on trans and non-binary people's experiences of healthcare. And as it happens, Healthwatch England started a campaign around that and invited local Healthwatch to contribute. And we've just been able to do that as well because we had the project up and running. So you can find out a little bit more about that. Each of these items have hyperlinks to them. We'll soon be publishing local results of Healthwatch England's National Eye Care Survey, so in case you're interested about that. We've been commissioned some time ago by Public Health and Communities in Suffolk to some research around ageing well. I note that there was a piece about this at the beginning of the meeting. The report can't be published, although it's finished, until the beginning of January, so that it coincides with Suffolk Public Health's annual public health report. Over 400 people responded to the survey, and we had a significant number of others through collaborative, diverse, community-led workshops that we conducted with, I think, 7 or 8 different organisations, charities from across the county. And the last thing I was going to mention was actually refers to Tim, is the voluntary and statutory partnership. In October, the Waveney Locality VASP ran a World Mental Health Day event. Anybody is welcome to ask the VASP administrator to share news. There is a newsletter that's sent out at the beginning of each week. The Waveney Locality VASP on the 4th of December will have Tim speaking for the first time. And the county VASP, and this is the chairs of each and the co-chairs of each of the locality VASP, there are 7 of them across the county, will hold their next meeting on the 9th of December. And the theme of this one will be Let's Talk About Women's Mental Health and Wellbeing in Suffolk. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. When we circulate the paper, please do not PDF it because we can't then get the link from the PDF. And it's the same with admin control. You can't go onto the links, to my knowledge. So we just need to leave it as a Word version so we can follow the links, please. Thank you. Unless you have some secrets how to leave the live link in a PDF.
No, you've got a Word version. That's right.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. It seems that you're kept busy, and actually I look forward to read some of those reports you've been talking about. So thank you so much. Alex.
Hi, yeah, I'm actually just going to concentrate on one thing, and that's the budget and the impact that's going to have on primary care. Healthwatch have been speaking in general terms to some practices. One practice informed us that its costs would be increasing by a minimum of 180,000 per annum, and it's evident this is going to be completely unsustainable. I understand the National Association of GPs have also been undertaking a service, and they're worried that there's about 600 practices, I mean this is across England, that could potentially close as a result. I mentioned this at the quality meeting that we had on Friday as an area of action that I really do think we need to be very mindful of. I suppose some of the issues that are in relation to what practices are able to draw down. And I think there's this general consensus that everyone thinks that the NHS is funded, but we must remember that GP practices are private businesses. Yet they're offered, they aren't offered the same protection as sort of hospitals per se. And this is causing a lot of angst. And I just want this, I think it should be a risk on our risk register moving forwards. I don't know what other people feel.
Thank you, Alex. I'll go to Mark on that one, if I may. Mark Burgess, please, because primary care is within your portfolio.
Absolutely. And I think that one's well recognised, Alex, and it's about where it sits. So I know it's been picked up by Sadie and the team, but I'd almost encourage us to think about more broadly, particularly impact on sector as well, the voluntary sector. So I think it's absolutely, it's a good point, well made. So we'll consider that and think about how we best incorporate it.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Alex. Any questions for Andy or Alex, please? No. Thank you, Beth. I can't see any hands up, so thank you. Okay, any other business reflection and so on? One of the items which has been circulated is the revised terms of reference for approval. I have noticed that the quoracy was not changed, because at some previous meeting we have agreed that we'll change it to 5, and it still says 8. And I know that that was raised with our governance team and they're revising it. So my ask to you is, subject to quoracy being changed to what we approved a few meetings ago, are you happy for us to just approve the committee terms of reference? In fact, they're approved by the board, but it came back to us now. So Frankie.
The only thing I wanted to mention is you and I have had a conversation about the reporting from Aging Well, and it's barely referenced. So I thought, oh, actually, if we are going to update this, because we've now said that the Aging Well Programme Board is going to report every time, I think it would be good to just capture a little bit more on Aging Well. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's good. Thank you. So shall I then suggest, because there's a couple of changes, let's bring to the next meeting the draft again, and then we'll approve it based on those changes rather than approving in principle. We need to be happy that the content of the wording is correct. Is that okay with everyone? Good. Thumbs up. Thank you. And then very helpfully for us, there was a list included of the policies which come under sort of our responsibility is for noting, but we know that we should expect those policies to come to us, to this committee for approval. So I'm sure they'll be built into the forward planner. Rachel, I will leave that in your capable hands, please. Meeting reflections. Yes, I'll have a word with my internet somehow. Apologies for starting late. Any other comments or observations from anybody? Frankie.
I do love it when we do a deep dive. I think it's really good when you can get you properly into one area. So
yeah, and I think we need to give a little bit more time, but today was sort of a good run for it. But we do need to get sufficient time for that discussion, so we don't feel bad about overrunning or whatever, when actually it's very important issues to discuss. So well done, and thank you to everybody. I can't see any more hands up, so I'm going to close the part 1 of the meeting now, and the committee members, you're going to join for a very brief part 2 straight away after this. But a big thank you to everyone, to all presenters, for all your good work, for all the questions and so on. Stay safe, and we'll see you again on Monday, the 27th of January. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Very much.